CBS Atlanta News presents Public Affairs on Peach.
In the race for Georgia's open U.S. Senate seat, the fierce competition for donors is underway, but whether the fundraising haul will translate into votes remains to be seen. Good Sunday morning to you. I'm Adam Murphy, consumer investigative reporter for CBS Atlanta. In a statewide race with a crowded field of Republicans, money can make a difference. However, the candidates say they are focused on the issues. Renee Starzyk went to the state GOP convention earlier this year, and they say they want to keep the Senate red.
Good to see you. Karen Handel is clearly comfortable on the campaign trail. She arrived at the state GOP convention all smiles.
Georgia ideals are American ideals. They are the ideals that this country was founded on, and we need to get back to basics. I'm going to run the best race that I can run, and I'm in this to win.
Handel crowds into the race for the Senate seat of Saxby-Chambliss, who is not seeking re-election. Others on the ballot, Phil Gingrey, Paul Brown, and Jack Kingston, all congressmen. They expect a tough fight for Republicans' votes.
If it gets nasty and everybody gets rude and, digs up dirt and everything, it could get ugly. We plan on running a high road campaign.
I think it's a good thing. I think competition is always a good thing.
I will now introduce our interim chairman.
As the convention kicked off, campaign workers stepped up their sales pitch. While the Georgia GOP may be divided on the best Senate candidate, they say their goal is to make sure the Democrats don't take over the open seat.
When this is over, no matter who wins, we're going to all have to come together and make sure that the Georgia Senate seat stays red.
And joining me now is Eric Tannenblatt, the head of public policy at McKenna Government Affairs. Eric, thank you for joining us on Public Affairs on Peach.
Glad to be here.
Sure appreciate your contribution today. Now tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in politics, if you will.
Well, I've been involved in politics here in Georgia for over 25 years. I worked for the first President Bush. I worked for U.S. Senator Paul Coverdale. I was Sonny Perdue's first chief of staff, and most recently headed up Mitt Romney's campaign here in Georgia.
So you have quite the resume there in politics. You should know about this Senate race in Georgia, right? Tell us a little bit about the race right now, who you believe is leading the pack.
Well, it's interesting. At this time, I would say that there's really no clear frontrunner, which is really uncommon so close to the primary. But we have three congressmen that are running. Congressman Jack Kingston seems to be winning what I call the money primary. He's consistently raised over $800,000 for the last three reporting periods. And has just under $3 million on hand. So you have to say he's leading in terms of money. And that also does speak to support, because that's coming from financial backers and investors in his campaign. But you can't lose sight of the fact that Congressman Phil Gingrey, who is from the metro Atlanta area, has $2.5 million in the bank. And then you also have Congressman Paul Brown, who does not seem to be raising much money. And then Karen Handel, who most recently ran for governor as former Secretary of State. She does not seem to be doing well on the fundraising side. And then really the fifth of the major candidates is David Perdue. He's a business person, cousin of former Governor Sonny Perdue. And this was really his first disclosure period that just ended September 30th, and he actually outraised all the other candidates, in addition to putting some of his own money in. So if you look at where the race stacks up right now, Jack Kingston, Phil Gingrey, and David Perdue seem to have the money, with the others sort of lagging behind. And that's important, because once the campaigns actually start, which will probably be sometime in April in terms of when they start deploying resources to get out the vote, it's the candidates with the money that are going to be able to get their message out and drive up their name ID.
So money matters. I mean,
absolutely.
You talked about Kingston leading the pack, if you will, with the money. And with that money, I mean, the advertising you can do on television, on radio, it makes a big difference in your opinion?
Well, absolutely. And in the case of someone like Congressman Jack Kingston, he's a congressman from the coastal Georgia, so he's not that well known in North Georgia. And if you look at the Republican primary vote, the majority of that vote, more than the majority, is going to be coming from North Georgia, Atlanta and the North Georgia area. So he needs to drive up his name ID. Congressman Gingrey represents a district here in Metro Atlanta, so his name ID is a bit higher, but he still has to drive up his name ID outside his congressional district. One of the advantages that Karen Handel has is she's run for office before, was the Fulton County Commission chair, so her name ID is high. Now, she could say, well, I don't need to have as much money because my name ID is high, but the comment I'll make is that once you get into the heat of the battle, voters are going to need to hear from these candidates and where they stand and how they differentiate themselves from the others. And so the candidates with the money are going to be able to tell their message.
Quickly, what's the difference between the candidates, in your opinion? Is there a lot of difference?
Well, there is a difference. Well, you have 3 congressmen who have a voting record. Some have been there longer than others. So there's going to be a lot of issues that the candidates are going to be able to pick out of their voting records to try and differentiate themselves. David Perdue, he's the only candidate that's not a politician. Karen Handel, while she's run for public office and has held public office, she hadn't served in Washington. So they'll all try and distinguish themselves based on their backgrounds. You have someone who just came out of the business world, someone who has some business experience, served in state office and local office, and then you have 3 congressmen. And
so, as it stands right now, if you had to pick a front runner, I know you said it's really tight and no one seems to be standing out, but who do you think, in your opinion, is leading the pack?
You know what? I'm not going to play that game just because I really don't know. I really don't see a clear front runner. As I said, Jack Kingston's winning the money primary. But, you know, it's going to take money to get yourself known. And so I think this race is wide open right now.
And so voters need to look closely at all the candidates, right? Just review their information, study them a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, this is going to be a spirited race. I do think that the Republicans are going to hold on to this race unless the Republicans nominate the wrong candidate. And that's something that we have to take into consideration, too, because this is an open Senate seat. They don't happen very often. It's not often that you have an open Senate seat. So it's going to be a spirited contest. And the Democrats seem to all be unifying around their candidate, Michelle Nunn.
Political insider Eric Tanenblatt. You'll be back on the show here in a couple of minutes to talk a little bit more about the mayor's race. Great information, though. Thanks for joining us on the program. And when we come back, we are talking about the closely watched Atlanta school board elections. Stay with us right here on Public Affairs on Peach.